The Republican is continuing their series of heritage books on the histories of the ethnic groups that have come to Western Massachusetts through the years. There are books this fall on the Latino and Jewish populations of our region, and the book we're discussing tonight, Struggle for Freedom, the History of African Americans in Western Massachusetts. Here with us, Wayne Phaneuf, executive editor of the Republican, and Joe Carvalho, former president of the Springfield Museums and a co-author on this book. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. Always good to see both of you. Wayne, let me ask you, this whole project really, to some extent, is your baby, if you will. I mean, you've been long interested in local history, local guy, and where did the idea to do this kind of history of each ethnic group really come from for you?
Well, it first grew out of it. Our first book was Springfield's 375th anniversary. And then while we were in the middle of the 375th anniversary doing that book, the tornado hit. And so we did a book called Path of Fury, which was primarily a picture book on the tornado. And then we decided that the best way to tell the history of Springfield and the history of Western Massachusetts is to go through each major ethnic group that's here, tell their story, and when you put it all together, you really have the story of the whole region. And so we started out with the largest ethnic group, the Irish Americans, in a book called The Irish Legacy, which came out last year. The Struggle for Freedom book has always been one that, we actually started that one second, but it took so long to do that it was delayed a little bit because when Joe and I started it, we decided that we wanted to, it wasn't going to be a picture book. It was although there are 400 photos in the book, it was going to be the first comprehensive history of the African American community that was ever done in Western Massachusetts. And starts in 1640 and ends with Obama's second inauguration.
Pretty inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Carvalho, let me ask you, you come to this with a special background and interest. If you, I've known you a long time when you're back in the history room at the library and former president of the Springfield Museums. You're co-author on this book, along with, we should mention, Professor Todd Robinson, originally from Springfield, son of Bishop and former Deputy School Superintendent Bryant Robinson. That's right. He's a professor of history at University of Nevada, Las Vegas now. He's contributed. But I know you previously wrote the book, Black Families of Hampden County, 1650 to 1865. When I first saw that book, the thing that hit me was 1650. I had no idea. There really is a very long and rich African-American history in our region.
Absolutely, and that book was meant to be a very detailed look at every evidence of a Black American who was in our region right up to the Civil War. And so it's a comprehensive genealogical, biographical book. And what was needed is this book that Wayne and I did was to do, with Todd, was to do this narrative that wove those individuals into the fabric of our regional history. And it's amazing what was missing out of the traditional histories. And you're going to see as we do more and more ethnic groups, each ethnic group, their stories. If you imagine our regional history as a gigantic puzzle with lots of pieces of the puzzle missing, and we're bit by bit putting those puzzle pieces in there so people have a complete picture of how we came to be, how we succeeded as a region, how we are quite one of the more remarkable regions of this entire country.
Gentlemen, let me ask you, I'll direct the question to Wayne first, but I'm sure you'll both want to jump in on this. The history of African Americans in particular in this country, in this region, a little different from everybody else's. Everybody else pretty much came here. Maybe they didn't really want to. Things were bad in their homeland, or the potato famine had failed in the case of the Irish. They were being conscripted in the army, didn't want, whatever it might have been. But they came here more or less freely. Most of the African Americans came in chains, and that really sort of expressed their entire experience, always looked down upon, harder to get a leg up, harder to get ahead than any other group.
To this day. You know? And I think one of the things that we wanted to underscore, I mean, the first 150 years plus of the colonies, there was slavery in Western Massachusetts. And most of the ministers had slaves. And of course, later on, when the Underground Railroad movement started, most of the ministers were involved in the Underground Railroad. So you know,
they got religion.
Yeah, they did get religion, but you know, and Oh. And then we even deal with the Great Migration from like the early 1900s up until 1970, which was, most of the time when you talk about a migration, it's going from one country to another. This was going from one part of the country to another part of the country. And,
Joe, as well, I know this is an area you've researched.
Right, right. And what's interesting to us, and what was perhaps most amazing in our research, is that, people think of history as progress as being a linear thing. We get better, better, better. But really, in terms of race relations, it's very cyclical. There were times where they get better, and then they dip back down again. And then they get better, and they dip back down again. And telling that story, it's very sad to see those moments of taking step backward. After the Civil War happened, freedom happens, and then Reconstruction, and slowly, surely, Jim Crow laws, separate but equal, quote, policies, segregation comes into play, the Klan comes in, and then the Civil Rights Movement comes up and people start to achieve again, and then where we are today. So I think, if nothing else, this history tells us all, white and black, all races, to be ever vigilant about equality. And so it's not a guarantee. It's not always going to be better unless we make sure it's better.
Terrific example of that in the book is one of the last chapters of the book. Is here we had Obama being elected as the first African American president. On the eve of the election, a church in Springfield is burned to the ground. A primarily black church is burned to the ground.
And that's Bishop Brian Robinson's church.
And that's Bishop Brian Robinson's church. His son helped write it, and he wrote those chapters. And we talk about that. And so what you see, that's the reason why the struggle continues, because you think you're making progress, and then all of a sudden you fall back. And you think, this is a book that should, we're getting a lot of interest in the African American community. This is a book that should really be in everybody's home, because once you read this book, you understand pretty much where we are today from where we've been over the last 300 plus years.
Joe Carvalho, a little less than half a minute. Put it in a little bit of perspective. You've studied the African American population in this region a long, long time.
Yes, sir.
What's being part of a book like this mean to you?
It's very special. This story is a unique story within the context of national African American history, but also American history. And it places Springfield in a very important role, an anti-slavery role, that perhaps the rest of the country should pay attention to. We're also hoping that this serves as a model for other regions to look at their African American community's experience and perhaps give more detail and breadth to its story.
Well, Joe Carvalho, Wayne Phaneuf, thank you for the book. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Jim.